The throne room of the Vorkal queen was a place most beings never saw and lived to tell the tale. It was a massive chamber, the walls grown from black organic stone that pulsed faintly, like the inside of some gigantic living creature. The floor was made of hard, glass-like material that reflected the tall, jagged spires rising to the ceiling. Every surface seemed alive, breathing, twitching, humming with the faint sounds of alien life. The air was heavy with a strange smell, a mix of burned metal, sweet decay, and something sharp like acid. It clung to the skin, making every breath feel thick and slow. The heat in the room came not from fire, but from the constant movement of the Queen's attendants. Hundreds of smaller insectoid drones crawling up the walls and across the floor, their many legs clicking in unison. At the far end of the hall, on a raised platform of black bone, sat the Queen herself. She was enormous. Her chitinous body glistened under the dim red lights. 6 long limbs rested on the throne's armrests, 2 tipped with claws sharp enough to cut through steel, the others ending in delicate finger-like appendages that could weave silk, splice DNA, or crush a skull without effort. Her head was crowned with long, spiked crests, and her eyes, dozens of them, shifted and blinked in no pattern at all. The Queen's voice, when she spoke, could shake the air like a storm. On either side of her stood her warlords, each wearing armor made from the shells of their enemies. They carried jagged spears grown from biometal and blades coated in paralytic venom. They were her most loyal killers, each responsible for conquering entire human colonies. Today, the court was in session. Prisoners were being paraded before her rebels, deserters, captured spies from lesser alien species. None lasted long. The Queen had little patience for weakness. But then, the heavy doors at the far end of the hall opened again. The sound of armored boots echoed down the long walkway. 2 Vorkal guards, massive creatures with the strength of 10 men, dragged a figure between them. His hands were bound with bio-cables that writhed like snakes, and his head hung low, shadow hiding his face. His armor was scorched and dented, its once white plating now a dirty gray with streaks of dried blood. Every step he took left a faint smear behind. The Queen's many eyes turned toward him. For a moment there was no recognition, just the usual curiosity she gave to any doomed prisoner. But then, her movements froze, her head tilted slightly. The spines along her back rose like the hackles of a predator. She leaned forward on the throne, her eyes narrowing. It could not be. The warlords noticed her sudden tension. They glanced between her and the prisoner, unsure why their ruler, who had seen countless enemies die, would pause for one broken human. The prisoner was thrown to his knees. One of the guards kicked him in the back, forcing him to lift his head. The Queen saw his face, and she screamed. The sound was not like a human scream. It was a screech of grinding metal and cracking stone, high-pitched yet powerful enough to shake dust from the ceiling. The smaller drones in the room scattered in terror, as if her fury could kill them too. "You!" she hissed, her voice a mix of rage and disbelief. Her mandibles snapped open and shut. "You were supposed to be dead." The warlords shifted uncomfortably. They had seen the Queen angry before, but not like this. The prisoner, Captain Elias Rourke, did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked up slowly, meeting the Queen's gaze without fear. There was a faint smile at the corner of his mouth, but his eyes were hard, unblinking. It was the look of a man who had seen the edge of death and walked back. The Queen's mind raced. She remembered the siege of Ceres months ago, when the last human fleet had tried to defend their outer colonies. She remembered the battle. How her swarm ships had torn through the human vessels like blades through cloth. She remembered the moment Rourke's ship had been caught in a gravitic snare, crushed under the fire of 100 weapons. She had seen the explosion herself. His death had been certain, and yet here he was, Her claws dug into the throne's armrests. "How?" she demanded. "How are you alive?" Elias tilted his head slightly, as if considering whether she deserved an answer. "Guess you don't know humans as well as you thought," he said, his voice low but steady. The queen's mandibles clicked sharply in anger. "You mock me?" "I don't need to," Elias replied. "You've already made your mistake." The warlords hissed, stepping forward, ready to strike him down. But the queen raised one claw to stop them. She wanted to hear more. Elias didn't speak again. Instead, his eyes scanned the throne room, counting guards, noting exits, measuring distances. The queen could feel his mind working, and it unsettled her. The Vorkal were a hive species. They thought in patterns, in collective instinct. But humans thought like predators. "Take him to the holding chamber," the queen ordered finally, her voice colder now. "I will question him myself." The guards moved to obey, dragging Elias to his feet. As they pulled him away, he looked back over his shoulder at her and said almost casually, "You should have made sure I was dead the first time." For the first time in years, the queen felt something alien to her nature. Not anger, not hunger, but fear. The holding chamber was deep inside the citadel, a maze of tunnels grown from living walls. They pulsed faintly, as if blood was moving through them. The air was damp and warm, filled with the faint hiss of the queen's drones moving somewhere. Beyond sight, two guards shoved Captain Elias Rourke inside. The door closed behind him with a sound like stone grinding on stone. The room was small, lit only by the dull glow from patches of bioluminescent moss. A single chair, grown from black chitin, stood in the center. Restraints shaped like hooked claws sprouted from its arms and legs. The guards motioned for him to sit. Elias didn't move. One of them reached for his weapon, but Elias stepped forward and sat down calmly, as if he had chosen it himself. The restraints closed around him, their sharp tips pressing against his skin. The guards hissed in satisfaction and left, sealing the door. For a moment, the only sound was the slow breathing of the walls. Elias closed his eyes. He had not seen the inside of a Vorkal hive in months, not since the siege of Ceres. Back then, his ship, the Iron Reaper, had been part of the last human defense line. They were outnumbered 5-1, but they fought anyway. The Vorkal ships were alive, each one a predator that could tear apart steel with its teeth. The Iron Reaper had taken heavy damage early in the battle. Half the crew was dead within the first hour. Fire spread through the corridors. Gravity failed in parts of the ship, and the wounded floated helplessly, too injured to hold on. Elias had ordered the surviving crew to abandon ship, but the escape pods were destroyed before they could even launch. The only choice left was to fight, until the end. When the gravitic snare hit, the Iron Reaper was dragged into the path of the Queen's flagship. The last thing Elias remembered was the blinding light of impact. And then nothing. The Vorkal thought that was the end of him. But they were wrong. Elias woke up days later, drifting in a wrecked escape pod that must have broken free during the collision. Life support was failing, food and water were almost gone. His wounds were bad, a shattered rib, burns across his left side, but he was alive. A lesser man might have waited to die. Elias did not. He forced himself to work, pulling apart the pod's systems, turning scraps into tools. He caught a drifting Vorkal scout ship on his sensors. It was damaged, abandoned by its crew. Using the last of the pod's fuel, he reached it. Inside, he found the body of a Vorkal pilot. Elias studied the aliens' gear, learned how their controls worked, and soon had the ship moving. For weeks, he hopped from one derelict vessel to another, scavenging food, weapons, and knowledge. It was in those weeks that Elias learned something the Vorkal never expected. Their biotechnology could be hacked. The Vorkal used living systems for everything, navigation, weapons, even communications. But those systems had patterns, and patterns could be broken. Using human creativity and sheer stubbornness, Elias learned to trick their ships into obeying him. At first, he used this skill to survive. Later, he used it to fight back. He began to send false orders into the swarm's communication network, redirecting supply ships into empty space, sending warships chasing phantom fleets. He left traps in abandoned stations, luring Vorkal crews to their deaths. Whispers began to spread among the swarm. They spoke of a human ghost who could walk unseen through their worlds, who knew their secrets, who could kill a squad with nothing but stolen alien knives. That ghost was Elias Rourke. Now, months later, Elias had let himself be captured. It wasn't carelessness. It was part of his plan. He sat in the restraint chair, waiting. He knew the Queen would come to him. She would want answers. And he would give her just enough truth to keep her guessing. The door slid open. The Queen entered, her many limbs moving with a slow, deliberate grace. 2 warlords followed, their weapons ready. The Queen stopped in front of Elias, her towering frame casting a shadow over him. Her eyes scanned him, searching for weakness. "You are a ghost," she said finally. "My soldiers tell stories of you. You move where you should not. You kill where you should not. But ghosts are not real. So, what are you?" Elias met her gaze. "I'm human," he said simply. Her mandibles clicked in irritation. "Human! Your kind is broken. Your fleets are gone. Your colonies burn. You are nothing." "If we're nothing," Elias said, "why are you afraid?" One of the warlords stepped forward, hissing. The Queen raised a claw to stop him. Her eyes narrowed. "I am not afraid of one man." "You should be," Elias said. Silence filled the room. The walls seemed to lean closer as if listening. The Queen moved around him slowly, studying him from every angle. "You came here on purpose," she said. "Why?" Elias smiled faintly. "Because I wanted to look you in the eyes before I finished what I started." The Queen tilted her head. "And what is that?" "You'll see," Elias said. The warlords growled, but the Queen said nothing. She leaned closer, her breath like hot metal. "You think you can defeat me?" Elias didn't answer. Instead, he glanced at the floor. The Queen followed his gaze, and for a moment, her eyes widened. A small, round device lay there, barely visible under the shadows. It was no bigger than a fist, its surface alive with tiny, pulsing lights. The Queen's claws twitched. "What is that?" Elias looked up at her. "A message," he said, "for your entire empire." Before she could speak, the device emitted a soft chime. Somewhere deep in the hive, alarms began to wail. The Queen spun toward the door, shouting orders to her warlords. But when she looked back, Elias was smiling again, calm, unshaken, as if everything was going exactly as planned. And in truth, it was. The alarm inside the hive was unlike any human siren. It was deep and heavy, like the roar of some massive beast buried in the walls. The sound made the living stone tremble, and the glow from the moss dimmed and brightened in quick pulses like a heartbeat racing in panic. The Queen's warlords rushed toward the exits, their weapons drawn, their bodies tense. The smaller drones scattered along the walls, climbing over each other in confusion. The entire throne hive felt alive, restless, and afraid. In the middle of the chaos, Captain Elias Rourke sat still in the restraint chair. The faint smile had not left his face. The Queen turned to him sharply, her spines rising along her back. "What have you done?" Elias tilted his head, looking past her as if listening to something only he could hear. "You'll find out soon enough," he said. Her mandibles snapped in anger. "Tell me!" I'm not here to answer your questions, Elias replied, his voice calm, almost casual. I'm here to give you a choice. The queen leaned closer, her eyes, dozens of them, fixing on him with predatory focus. A choice? Yes, Elias said. Retreat from every human world, or lose more than you can imagine. The queen's warlords hissed in laughter, their mandibles clicking. One stepped forward, towering over Elias. This is the last human fleet captain, the warlord said in the Vorkal tongue. He is mad. Shall I kill him now? But the queen raised one claw to stop him. There was something in Elias's voice that bothered her. It was not bluffing bravado, it was certainty. She turned her attention back to the small device on the floor. Its lights continued to pulse slowly, rhythmically, like breathing. What is it? She demanded. Elias's eyes followed hers. That? He shrugged. One of many. Her spines twitched. Many. You destroyed our fleets, Elias said, his voice dropping lower, more serious. You burned our colonies. You left us with nothing. But humans are dangerous when we have nothing left to lose. The queen circled him slowly. Explain. Elias took a deep breath, as if considering how much to reveal. Your swarm's worlds. They all have cores. Massive energy hearts that keep your hive cities alive. Without them, your entire planet collapses. Your species dies. The queen's claws tapped against the floor. You know this. Many species do. But no one can reach them. They are deep under our protection. Elias looked her in the eyes. That's what you thought. Her eyes narrowed. I've been to 3 of your worlds already, Elias said. Each one now carries a gift from me. A gravitic imploder, stolen from you, rebuilt by us, tuned to your cores. If I give the order, they'll collapse. Your worlds will tear themselves apart from the inside. The warlords hissed in disbelief, but the queen said nothing. She studied him, weighing his words. She knew the gravitic imploder technology well. It was their own creation, capable of destroying entire cities in moments. And she also knew that humans had a strange ability to adapt stolen technology faster than any other race she had fought. How could you place them? She asked at last. Elias leaned back in the chair, the restraints biting into his skin. While you hunted me, I hunted you. Every battle you fought, every ship you lost, every station you abandoned, I was there. Sometimes you saw me, sometimes you didn't. But I learned your routes, your patterns, your weaknesses. You thought you were chasing a ghost, but I was planting seeds. One warlord slammed his spear into the ground. Lies, he roared. Elias didn't even look at him. Then call my bluff, he said. Give the order to kill me. See what happens. The queen's eyes shifted from him to the device on the floor. Its lights were now pulsing faster. She hated this feeling. Fear was not natural to her kind. The swarm fought without hesitation, without doubt. But right now, her thoughts were tangled. If he was telling the truth, then even one imploder could destroy a hive world. If he was lying, then killing him would be easy. And yet, why would he come here to her throne if he had nothing? She stepped closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. If I agree to your terms, you will remove these devices? Elias looked at her for a long moment. I'll disarm them. But if I disappear, or if I die, the fail-safes will trigger, and your worlds will burn. The queen's claws twitched again. You dare threaten me in my own hive? Elias's smile was gone now. No, he said. I'm giving you the chance to survive. The alarms continued to blare. The warlords exchanged uneasy glances. For the first time, the queen could feel doubt spreading through her court. She straightened to her full height. Take him back to the throne room, she ordered. We will discuss this where all can hear. As the guards moved to drag Elias away, he spoke one more time. You don't have much time to decide, Your Majesty. Every second you waste, the countdown continues. The Queen stopped walking for a fraction of a second before continuing forward. That pause, small as it was, told Elias everything he needed to know. They reached the throne room again. It was emptier now. Many of the lesser drones had fled deeper into the hive. The warlord stood at the edges, watching him with a mix of hatred and unease. The Queen sat upon her throne and stared down at him. You say humans are dangerous when desperate, she said. Prove it. Elias's gaze swept over the chamber. You've been fighting humans for years, he said. You've seen our ships, our soldiers. You've seen how we fight when we think we can win. Yes, the Queen said. But what you haven't seen, Elias continued, is how we fight when we know we're going to lose. That's when we become something you don't understand. We don't retreat. We don't surrender. We take you down with us, no matter the cost. The Queen's claws tapped against the armrest. And you think this makes you strong? It makes us human, Elias said. And that's why you can't beat us. For a long moment, the Queen didn't respond. Then she leaned back in her throne, her many eyes still locked on him. If what you say is true, then perhaps the war ends here. Elias said nothing. He had pushed her far enough. The next move was hers. In the silence, the device on the floor pulsed faster. The Queen's eyes flicked toward it, then back to him. She hated that she didn't know if it was real, and that was exactly what Elias wanted. The throne room was quieter now. The alarms had stopped, but the air felt heavy, as if the whole hive was holding its breath. The Queen sat motionless on her throne, her many eyes fixed on Elias Rourke. The small device still lay on the floor. Between them, its lights pulsing steadily like the beat of a hidden heart. The warlords stood in a half-circle, their weapons lowered but ready. None of them spoke. Even the drones lining the walls were silent, their usual clicking and shifting stilled. Elias stood where the guards had left him, his armor scratched and burnt, his wrists bound. But his stance was steady, his gaze locked on the Queen. Finally, the Queen broke the silence. Her voice was deep and slow, almost calm. You say you have planted many of these imploders in my worlds. That's right, Elias said. And you say that with a single order they will destroy my hives. Yes. The Queen leaned forward slightly. And what do you want, human? Elias didn't hesitate. Your swarm will withdraw from every human world, every colony, every station. You will leave our people in peace. If you do that, I'll disarm the devices, the warlords hissed in anger. One stepped forward, his armor rattling. We cannot. The Queen raised one claw and silenced him without a word. Her eyes never left Elias. You want peace? Or do you want victory? Elias's voice stayed calm. I want survival. My people can't win a war of numbers against your swarm. But you can't win a war of fear against us. This isn't about victory. It's about making sure we both live to see tomorrow. The Queen's mandibles clicked softly, a sign she was thinking. If I agree, how do I know you will keep your word? You don't, Elias said plainly. The same way I don't know you'll keep yours. That's the gamble. The difference is, you have more to lose if you call my bluff. The Queen studied him for a long moment. Her many eyes moved in different directions, as if looking at him from every possible angle. She was a predator, and he was prey. But something about this prey unsettled her. You speak as if you are already certain I will give in, she said. I know what your kind values, Elias replied. The swarm survives at any cost. You can rebuild lost fleets. You can grow new soldiers. But if you lose hive worlds, you lose your core. You lose everything. and I've put those at risk. The queen shifted slightly in her throne. If I kill you now, perhaps the threat dies with you. Elias's eyes didn't leave hers. Or perhaps killing me triggers the failsafe, and then you spend the rest of your short life watching your worlds collapse into themselves. Are you willing to gamble your empire on that chance? The warlords looked at each other uneasily. They were used to facing enemies who begged for their lives or spat defiance in their final moments. But this human, he was offering a deal. And he was doing it from a position of control. The queen's voice dropped lower, more dangerous. What if I capture you and force you to reveal the locations? You can try, Elias said, his voice like cold steel. But you'll never know if the information is true until it's too late. One of the warlords snarled. Enough of his games! Let me break him! The queen didn't respond immediately. She looked back at the device on the floor. Its lights were still pulsing, calm, steady, patient. Human, she said finally, if I agree to this bargain, I expect more than your word. I will need proof that the devices are real, and that you can remove them. You'll have it, Elias said, but not all at once. I'll disarm one device as a sign of good faith. After that, your swarm will begin withdrawing. As you pull back, I'll disarm the rest. If you stop withdrawing, the countdown resumes. The queen's spines twitched along her back. She hated the idea of being forced into a position where a single human dictated her moves. But she also knew the cost of ignoring the threat. Which world will you disarm first? She asked. Elias allowed himself a faint smile. Your choice. That way you know I'm telling the truth. The queen's eyes narrowed. You are clever. I'm desperate, Elias corrected. There's a difference. For the first time, a strange, quiet laugh escaped her throat. It wasn't friendly. It was the sound a predator makes when it finds a worthy opponent. Very well, human. I will consider your offer. Elias tilted his head. You don't have long. Her mandibles opened slightly. Why? Because, Elias said, glancing toward the device, that one isn't just a beacon. It's a timer. The queen's claws froze in mid-motion. How long? She demanded. Elias met her gaze. An hour. The throne room erupted in noise. Warlords shouted in the Vorkal tongue. Drones skittered across the walls, and the heavy air filled with the electric tension of a hive, suddenly aware of a deadly countdown. The queen rose from her throne in one smooth, terrifying motion. Take him to the secure chamber. Do not harm him. And find my strategists, now. The guards moved to obey. Elias didn't resist as they led him away, but he spoke over his shoulder to the queen. 58 minutes. The secure chamber was colder than the rest of the hive, its walls smooth and metallic rather than living. It was clearly a place where the Vorkals stored things they didn't trust their organic structures to protect. The guards locked him inside, posting 2 sentries at the door. Elias sat down on the floor, leaning back against the wall. His face was calm, but inside his mind he was already running through the next steps. He had her attention now. He had planted the seed of fear. The next move was to make her believe, not just in the threat, but in him. Because if she doubted, for even a moment, the deal would die, and so would he. Back in the throne room, the queen gathered her closest warlords and strategists. The debate was fierce. Some argued that the human was lying, that he could not possibly have planted such devices without being detected. Others warned that taking the risk was too dangerous. The queen listened to them all, but her eyes kept drifting. Back to the device still pulsing on the floor, she had seen human cunning before. They were adaptable, unpredictable. They had turned defeats into victories more than once in the war, and this one, this Elias Rourke, had already done the impossible by surviving the siege of Ceres. Finally, she silenced them all with a single, raised claw. "We will test him," she said. "We will give him one world to disarm. If he does, We will know the danger is real. If he fails, we kill him." The warlords bowed their heads in agreement. An hour later, the guards came for Elias. They led him back into the throne room, where the queen was waiting. "You will disarm the device on my hive world of Vorkesh," she said. "If you succeed, we will begin our withdrawal from the human worlds." Elias nodded slowly. "Then let's get started." And as they led him away toward a waiting ship, the queen realized something that made her spines rise again. He wasn't afraid. Not of her. Not of the swarm. Not even of dying. And that, she thought, was what made humans so dangerous. The ship hummed softly as it cut through the dark clouds above Vorkesh, a hive world scarred by years of war. Inside the cockpit, Captain Elias Rourke sat with grim focus. Around him, the crew moved quietly, preparing the gravitic imploders. Disarm system. Outside the viewport, the sprawling hive city stretched like a living labyrinth, alive with thousands of insectoid shapes moving below. Elias's mind raced through everything he had risked to get here. The betrayals, the battles, the moments when death was close enough to touch. But now, at the final step, there was no room for doubt. They reached the landing bay, and as the ship settled, the Queen's warlords awaited them. "Disarm the device." The Queen's voice echoed in his communicator. "Show me this proof." Elias nodded. On it. The team deployed swiftly, moving toward the underground core where the gravitic imploder was hidden. The corridors were dark, filled with the eerie hum of energy and the faint scuttling of distant drones. Elias's fingers worked quickly, inputting codes and overriding security protocols. Around him, his team secured the perimeter, alert for any surprise attacks. Then the device's lights flickered, slowed their pulse, and stopped. A faint signal confirmed the disarm. Elias allowed himself a small smile. "Device disarmed," he said. "Your turn, Queen." On the other side of the communicator, the Queen's voice was tight with tension. "We will begin withdrawal immediately." The warlords around her were restless, but the Queen raised her claw again. "We survive. For now." Back on the ship, Elias breathed easier, but the war was far from over. His actions had sparked a fragile peace, but the swarm was still a deadly enemy. The humans had won a battle of fear, but the war of survival was ongoing. Days passed as the swarm retreated from human worlds. The Queen kept her word, but her eyes never stopped watching Elias. One evening, in the cold silence of the command deck, the Queen finally spoke to him directly. "You are not like other humans," she said. Elias shrugged. "We learn fast." "More than that," she said. "You fight not just with weapons, but with your mind. You use fear, hope, uncertainty." "Survival isn't just strength," Elias replied. "It's knowing what to risk." The Queen studied him, her many eyes reflecting a strange respect. "Perhaps we were wrong to see humans as weak, and maybe you were wrong to see us as predictable," Elias said. The truce held, but the tension remained. Both sides knew this peace was a fragile thread in a storm, but it was a start. The Queen turned her attention to rebuilding, while Elias prepared his people for whatever came next. In the end, it wasn't brute strength that saved humanity. It was the human edge, the ability to face fear, take risks, and turn desperation into hope. The war was not over, but humanity had shown it would never be broken, and in that there was power no alien could ever take away.